The first thing I noticed when I stepped into my room was the shocking emptiness. I froze, my mind struggling to understand what had just happened. Everything was gone: my desk, computer, books, even my clothes. The closet stood wide open, mocking me with its emptiness. It was as if I had never lived there. My heart raced as my eyes darted around the room, trying to piece together the impossible. Suddenly, a burst of laughter broke through the thick silence. Startled, I turned to find Kate, my sister-in-law, standing in the doorway. Her arms were crossed, a smirk playing on her lips, and her eyes gleamed with an unsettling amusement. "Look at your room now," she said, her voice dripping with satisfaction. "So clean and tidy." I couldn't comprehend what I was seeing or hearing. My confusion quickly gave way to anger. "Kate, what is this? Where's all my stuff?" My voice trembled, barely masking the fury rising inside me. I had worked hard to build my space, to make it mine, and now it was gone. She shrugged, her smirk widening. "Go look in the garden." Without waiting for her to explain, I ran to the window and pulled back the curtains. My stomach churned as I saw my belongings strewn across the lawn. Everything was there. My computer, my books, my clothes, soaked and caked with mud. The rain from the previous night had left everything ruined. My breath caught in my throat as I felt my hands tremble with shock and outrage. I turned back to Kate, my anger bubbling over. "Why? Why would you do this?" But instead of an apology, she tilted her head, the smug smile still plastered on her face. "Aren't you embarrassed?" she said, crossing her arms over her chest. "You're 30 and still living in your parents' house. You should be ashamed." Her words hit me like a slap to the face. It wasn't just the destruction of my things. It was the cruelness behind her words. For months, I had tried to tolerate her, believing that maybe, just maybe, things would get better. But this was too much. I clenched my fists, holding back the torrent of emotions that threatened to overwhelm me. "You're right, Kate," I said, my voice cold and steady. "I am leaving. I've already made plans. I'll be out of here next month." Her eyes lit up with glee. "Finally!" she exclaimed. "Good riddance! I've been waiting for this day." She turned on her heel and walked out, leaving me standing in the middle of my destroyed room. I let out a shaky breath, trying to regain control of myself. I looked out the window again at the mess she had made. My work equipment was out there, and if any of it had been ruined, I didn't know how I would manage. My job as a freelance web developer relied entirely on that equipment. Carefully, I made my way outside to survey the damage. My laptop, thankfully, still worked, but my books and clothes were beyond saving. I sighed, pushing back the frustration that threatened to break through. I couldn't believe this was my life now. I hadn't always lived like this. A few years ago, I had my own apartment, my own space. After graduating from college, I worked in the real estate industry for a while, but it wasn't my passion. I had always been fascinated by web development, and after meeting a colleague who excelled at programming, I decided to make the leap. At 24, I quit my job and enrolled in a programming school, with no savings to fall back on. My parents, always supportive, allowed me to move back in with them while I studied. I graduated and started freelancing. It was tough at first, barely any clients, little pay, but after a year, my work got recognized. Soon I was able to support myself, and things were looking up. But then everything changed. My father passed away suddenly, leaving my mother alone. Just months later, she had a terrible fall and injured her leg. She couldn't take care of herself anymore, and I couldn't bear the thought of her struggling by herself. So I made the decision to move back home permanently. I worked from home, paid for her care, and took on the responsibility of the household. Then, my brother Tom and Kate came into the picture. Tom had always been the golden child. He excelled in school, graduated from a prestigious university, and landed a high-paying job at a reputable company. I was proud of him, boasting about his success to anyone who would listen. But then one day he showed up at our family home, his face pale and drawn. His company had gone bankrupt, and with no income, he and Kate couldn't afford rent anymore. They moved in with us, and I welcomed them with open arms. But Kate was different. From the moment she stepped foot in the house, I could sense her disdain for me. She made snide comments about my work, calling it playing on the computer. She would barge into my room without knocking, demand things from me, and use my belongings without permission. It was a constant battle of small insults and passive-aggressive behavior. At first, I tolerated it. Tom was going through a tough time, and I didn't want to add to his stress. He was constantly out looking for jobs, and I didn't want to bother him with Kate's antics. But her latest stunt, throwing my belongings into the garden, had crossed a line I couldn't ignore. That night, after the rain-soaked chaos, I sat down with my brother. I couldn't hold back anymore. I told him everything, how Kate had been treating me, the insults, the disrespect, and now the destruction of my things. To my surprise, Tom didn't defend her. Instead, he sighed, running his hand through his hair. "I've been thinking about leaving her," he admitted, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "She's been like this for a while, and I'm fed up." I was taken aback. Tom had always seemed so devoted to Kate, but the weight of their situation had clearly taken a toll on him. "I can't deal with her anymore," he continued. "I'm trying to get back on my feet, but she's making it impossible." The realization that my brother was just as miserable as I was hit me hard. I had thought I was the only one bearing the brunt of Kate's behavior, but now I saw that Tom was suffering too. A few days later, Kate announced that she was going on a trip with some friends. It seemed like the perfect opportunity to make our move, literally. With Kate out of the house for a few days, my brother, mother, and I packed our things and quietly moved into a new home. It was something we had been planning for a while, and now we had the chance to leave the toxic environment Kate had created. We didn't leave her with nothing. Her belongings were still at the old house, but the rest of us were gone. When Kate returned from her trip, she called my brother in a rage. "Where is everyone?" she shouted over the phone. "Why is the house empty?" I took the phone from Tom and calmly explained, "We've moved." "What? You've moved? Where?" she demanded, her voice dripping with anger and confusion. "You told me to leave, remember?" I said, keeping my voice steady. So, we all left. Kate was silent for a moment, clearly trying to process what had just happened. "But I didn't mean for everyone to leave," she finally spluttered. "Well, you didn't specify," I replied, not bothering to hide my amusement at the situation. For the first time since I had met her, Kate seemed to be at a loss for words. Then, in a voice that was almost unrecognizable, she said, "I'm sorry, Anna. I didn't mean it. Can we talk?" I was shocked by her sudden change of heart, but I wasn't buying it. Not after everything she had put me through. "No, Kate," I said firmly. "It's too late for that." And just like that, I hung up the phone. Tom filed for divorce shortly after. Kate, who had never worked and relied entirely on Tom's income, was left with nothing. She had to move out of the family home, and the small apartment she found for herself was a far cry from the life she had grown accustomed to. As for us, we thrived. My mother, Tom, and I settled into our new house, free from the negativity Kate had brought into our lives. Tom found a new job, and we began to rebuild the bond we had before everything fell apart. But the story didn't end there. One afternoon, as I sat in my new office space, focused on a client's project, my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered it anyway. "Anna," came the voice on the other end. It was Kate. "What do you want?" I asked, surprised by the call. I need help," she said, her voice trembling. "I'm in trouble." I sighed, leaning back in my chair. "What kind of trouble, Kate?" There was a long pause before she finally answered. "I have nothing left. I'm in debt, and I can't pay for anything. Tom won't talk to me, and my family has cut me off." The satisfaction I had expected to feel wasn't there. Instead, all I felt was pity. Kate had done so much damage, not just to me, but to herself as well. She had burned every bridge in her life, and now she was facing the consequences. "I'm sorry, Kate," I said, my voice soft but firm, "but I can't help you." And with that, I ended the call. As I sat there, I realized something important. Life had a way of sorting things out. The people who hurt others eventually faced their own reckoning. And for me, I had finally found peace, free from the chaos that had once dominated my world. The past was behind me, and for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful about the future.